Hi everybody, this is Lacey Parsons, and this is my presentation on a modern theorist for our EDU 506 class. I just want to start off by apologizing. I'm not sure what's going on with my camera. I've been messing with it for a few hours, and I think I just need somebody at the IT office of the school district to help reset my camera. It's not working in any application, so I apologize. There's no picture of me. It should be up there in the upper right hand corner, but my camera's not working in any of my applications that can use my camera, so I apologize. But let's get started nonetheless. So the modern theorist I am choosing to present on is Abraham Maslow, and his theory is the hierarchy of needs. So what piqued my interest on Maslow? So as of August this year, I am new to the teaching industry. I worked in healthcare for the last 12 years and have been working since I was 14 years old. So I've worked in several different industries, from restaurant, catering, to banking, to healthcare, even taught Taekwondo for a few years. So I have a wide variety of experiences to apply to this new career change. And as a new teacher, I often hear of all the behavioral struggles that everybody deals with. And unfortunately, the common stereotypes I hear revolve around theories of these students are not motivated to learn. And that's where that upper left-hand picture comes from. You best believe I stereotype. So I too obviously have behaviors in my classroom, and upon digging deeper and building relationships with my students, I find that the majority of these behaviors come from a basic foundational need not being met. Don't get me wrong, there are just some purely unmotivated students, but those I find are rare, few and far between personally, out of my 150 students. So that being said, I feel it's my duty to advocate and help influence these students who lack basic needs so that they can be successful. So many other students automatically are privileged to have these basic needs. So let's dive into Maslow's theory on the hierarchy of needs. This quote really stuck out to me as very powerful, so I'll read that to you from Dr. Maslow. A musician must make music, an artist must paint, and a poet must write if he is to ultimately be at peace with himself. What a man can be, he must be. This need we call self-actualization. It refers to man's desire for self-fulfillment, namely, to the tendency for him to become actually in what he is potentially, to become everything one is capable of becoming. So let's dive into what brought Dr. Maslow to that point. He was born in Brooklyn, New York. He was the oldest of 8 children. His parents were Jewish immigrants, and he later on in life married his cousin Bertha Goodman against his parents' wishes, and they had 2 children. And then in 1970, he did die of a heart attack. His educational experiences. So right off the bat there with Dr. Maslow going against his parents' wishes to marry his cousin already struck me as somebody who is practicing self-actualization without having been able to put words to it yet. Here we see too in his educational experience, his parents forced him to study law at the City College of New York, but then he decided to change career paths, where he left law in 1928 to study psychology. Again, I see this swift change applying to the theory that he later on identifies as his hierarchy of needs. He finished his doctorate in psychology at the University of Wisconsin, where he studied under Harry Harlow and Alfred Adler, Adler being a former colleague of the famous Sigmund Freud. So I think one of the biggest influencers of Maslow was himself. And in the article by Gonzalez de Haas, it is identified that he made the connection. Although he did not fight in World War II, he noticed that there was a clear lack of understanding between nations, and that identification of a lack of communication pushed him to pursue this passion he has so deeply for psychology. Again, he was influenced by Albert Adler, as identified before as Freud's colleague, and then psychologist Max Wertheimer and anthropologist Ruth Benedict were huge influencers of Dr. Maslow. And of course, his doctoral advisor, Harry Harlow, as depicted below, with his famous studies including monkeys. So here we have the famous Maslow's pyramid, representing the hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom, we start with the deficiency needs. As we work our way up, we transition into growth needs, and at the very top, we have self-transcendence, which Maslow actually didn't identify until the end of his career. When he first compiled this pyramid in theory, it ended with self-actualization, and self-transcendence came later on in his career. So let's summarize these hierarchy of needs, starting with the bottom, working our way up. So Maslow identified the physiological needs as the bottom foundational needs that have to be met for every human. That includes food, air, drink, sleep, warmth, exercise. Then we work our way up to safety, including security, stability, health, shelter, and money. The next level up, love and belonging. This starts to incorporate relationships, friendships, intimacy, acceptance, and money again. And then right before we hit the next level of growth needs, that self-esteem piece needs to be met. And this can be met through achievements, recognition, respect, and competence. Then summarizing the next piece of the pyramid as we move up, they are called growth needs. So that first growth need being cognitive, having a strong understanding and knowing of ideas and theories. And then we move up to aesthetic, okay, recognizing order, beauty, and symmetry. Then self-actualization was where Maslow's pyramid ended in the beginning. That is where one is able to identify how they can fulfill their personal potential, as Maslow did in pursuing psychology, it seems. And then later on in his career, he added self-transcendence, which he realized was a step further outside of self-actualization. You step out of that selfish realm and you step into helping others and connecting with something outside of yourself. So here are some 21st century implications of hierarchy of needs. I found a very interesting book by Chip Conley. Okay, he is the founder of Airbnb, and he wrote a book about how the hierarchy of needs helped his business become so successful. And the first piece of his literature that stuck out to me was that Maslow identified exceptional individuals such as Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, and Eleanor Roosevelt as individuals he would consider peakers, as opposed to most people who are considered non-peakers. The characteristics of those self-actualized people included creativity, flexibility, courage, willingness to make mistakes, openness, collegiality, and humility. Okay, and then Chip Conley also used a couple other businesses as examples of those who applied Maslow's theories and were very successful in doing so. The company NLS applied his concepts to their factory production lines to increase esteem and fulfillment during the period of the organizational man. Their key to success was aligning the employees' intrinsic motivations with the needs and priorities of the company. And then Chip also recognizes companies such as Whole Foods, Apple, and Pinterest, crediting Maslow's influence in helping develop their foundational elements of how they operate their business. Now, I know this class is on education, and so how this relates to education, I feel, having just stepped into education, I have almost every day been relating a standard or lesson to the real world. I think that everything we do in the education setting should be tied to something applicable in the outside world so we can paint a picture for these students as to what they have to look forward to, as to what the point and purpose of all this learning is for. And so showing them things like successful businesses, applying these concepts and using the same methods and building relationships with our students will help them see the big picture and how success is really just learning how to understand oneself wholly and then connect with others on the same level. So, personal implications of the hierarchy. Gonzalez de Haas also touched on cooperative learning being a proven method with a host of academic benefits for students. Okay, and also how critically important it is for teachers to build the self-esteem of their students with daily interactions. I personally take daily initiative to form relationships with my students, and when behaviors arise, I strive hard to relate and form a relationship so I can identify which deficient needs are not being met. And when I am able to identify that, I use local resources such as counselors and social workers to help those needs be met. Criticisms of the hierarchy of needs. Maslow himself admitted that only 1% of the population actually ever achieves self-actualization. So, that being said, what is the point in applying this theory if it's so unattainable? Well, I still believe that each step of the pyramid is a great achievement, and however far you can get up that pyramid, that is successful, even if you cannot reach the top. There's also arguments revolving around the fact that the pyramid doesn't touch on the importance of collaboration and connection. I don't necessarily agree with that, just based off of the deficiency needs. I mean, all of those things, like as a baby, physiological and safety, require the collaboration of your guardians, I guess, to have those. And then when you get into love and belonging and self-esteem, clearly those involve connecting with others, friendship, intimacy, respect, recognition. So I'm not sure I agree with that criticism from Denny, but that is out there. And perhaps the most striking criticism that I don't have a very good rebuttal for, I found from Hagen. And the quote goes like this: "It's striking for Maslow's theory that first world countries, where so many people's basic needs are met, experience considerably higher divorce rates. Within the United States, it is those with more money and more stable economic situation who have higher suicide rates than those from the lower socioeconomical strata." That is very alarming to me, and I don't really have a good rebuttal for that other than that possibly people experiencing that are staying in the deficient needs and not striving to meet those growth needs, that there's just not motivation or ambition or want to grow. And that is unfortunate. And as educators, I think we need to pursue and push as to why it is so important to be continual learners and continually work on growing and not being afraid of making mistakes. So That is why Maslow is so influential on me, and I hope you guys all agree and use his hierarchy of needs in your teaching philosophy in one way or another. Have a wonderful Christmas break, and thank you for listening.